Great. First hurdle over, technology seems to be working. Thanks for the introduction, Mark, and thank you very much for awarding us the award. Having seen the opposition, it really is quite a privilege to accept this honour on behalf of our club. Right, what I'm going to try and do is just very quickly run through what we are as a club, what we've done, what we think we've achieved, and what we hope to achieve in the future, and working towards next year, which is the 75th anniversary of the tank sinking. So, we're the Isle of Purbeck of Aqua Club. We're very, very lucky that we're actually based on Swanage Pier, which is fantastic. So our home ground, I think, is the home of British diving. We're a small club, probably about 30 members. But when we look back through the dive log, over 16 of those members were actually physically involved in diving the tanks and physically involved in the project. A lot of the others are how shall I put it, members with a lot of experience. And they've been involved in some of the research as well. When we started the project 2 years ago, it was very much as a, let's dive with purpose, let's go and do something instead of just the standard Saturday we go to this wreck, Sunday we go to this reef. And so we decided to adopt the tanks and to carry out a survey. This was shortly after Bournemouth University had carried out their sort of quite complex study, highlighting that the tanks had lost 60% of their metal. So we thought, right, as a club, let's put something back to our diving. But subtly, the emphasis changed. It became less about the tanks and more about telling the story of these 6 men. These are the 6 men who drowned in the exercise. And there's a memorial at Studland overlooking where the tanks have sunk, where their names are commemorated. It's a black slate memorial, and for us the project became much more about putting faces to the names, trying to find out something about those 6 young men. So that's reflected in our project aims and objectives. You can see the first one is to tell the story of Exercise Smash, the Valentine Tanks, and the 6 men who were lost on the 4th of April 1944. To keep that memory alive, I quite often refer to them as the Forgotten 6. You know, all they've got as a memorial is a black slate plaque. There's also another memorial up in Brookwood Cemetery, which is for soldiers of the Second World War who haven't got any known grave. That's 5 of our 6. Third one is to collate and record. As I say, building on what Bournemouth University did, we're trying to make sure that the history of these tanks is recorded and their memory is kept alive. So what are we studying? Well, these are the Valentine Tanks, designed by a Hungarian, Strausser, and what a crazy thing. You've got 15 tons of metal, which has got a little canvas skirt. Remember, these are going into battle, so the only thing keeping them afloat is thick canvas. And you can see them being launched on a flat, calm day. And you can see, oh crikey, there's not much of them sticking above the water. They'd land on the beach, drop their skirts, and in the case of the Valentine tanks, turn the turret round and then attack the enemy. And the bottom one, that's in a rough day. I'm not sure you can see it, but that's the back of the tank. That is where most of the tank is. So imagine being sent ashore in gunfire, in rough weather, with about that much protection. Deeply, deeply scary. And that's a view showing one going off, and you can actually see how steep those ramps are. You know, it's not just a case of gently going into the water. These tanks went straight down into the water engage the drives, or the drive would be engaged before they went in, and then they'd start having to manoeuvre. I've had the privilege of meeting a gentleman who's got a DD tank, and he's let me get inside it, and to be honest, clothes like this, I struggled. You know, to actually get inside John Pearson's tank in clothes like this, it wasn't, oh, right, I'm just going to get in, oh, I can get out. It was very much me squeezing in. You're in battle dress, you've got a May West, a life jacket on, to get in and out of these tanks. And they were giving Davis a submarine escape apparatus, and that's one of the guys. And you can see that's the driver sitting there. Yeah, he was the one that had to stay in the tank for most of the time. So as the water's coming over the top, the tank's, yeah, great. The skirts keep the water out, but when it goes in, it stays in. That water's getting higher and higher. That chap there has got to squeeze his way out to get to the surface. And the bottom picture is sort of an artist's impression of how the tank's on the bottom, and all the men are standing to attention by the looks of it, swimming to the surface. Reality was much different than that. The tanks sank during Exercise Smash. Exercise Smash, the biggest live fire exercise prior to D-Day, held at Studland because of its similarities to the beaches of Normandy. Started on April the 4th with Exercise Smash 1, which is when our tanks were launched, and went on to about the 23rd, 24th of April, with different phases as they go through. And this shows an artist's impression of Eisenhower, Montgomery, King George VI, and the other one, and Churchill, all watching the tanks. Sad thing is that photograph, or that is a photograph of a painting which used to be in one of the hotels. The hotel's changed hands, and to the best of my knowledge, nobody knows where that picture's gone now, which is a real shame. And then you've got Fort Henry, and in the top picture you can see the memorial looking over where the tanks went down. So, what we've been doing, we started April the 4th, 2017, the first dive on the tank, and then that's what we're hoping to work towards. April the 4th next year, 75th anniversary of the tank sinking. We're hoping to be working with the Regimental Association, the 4th, 7th Dragoon Guards, the National Trust, other organisations as well, to commemorate that event as part of a big build-up at Studland to 75 years after D-Day. How have we been carrying it out? Well, I'll do one of my thanks now. Thanks, some of it has got to go to Nautical Archaeology Society. Over the last 2 years, I've done quite a few training courses and taken that knowledge back into the club to, well, let's go start surveying. This is how we do it. Well, what do we do, Nick? How do we do these things? I've been project officer for the 2 years, and it's been a case of, right, we need to draw an outline plan, we need to measure. Standard surveying kit. This is one of the guns that remains, and measuring it. We think we've identified that they're Mark 9s and Mark 11s. There's still some discussion about it, and as I say later on, every answer brings another question. There's a lot more work to do. And you can see sort of building up basic site plans and scale drawings. We did try and do the full 3D brace quadrilaterals, I think the term is. The only trouble was, by the time you went down, you'd find that one of them had been put to the side and unscrewed. One of them had been brought up because 2 of the tanks are regularly dived as as recreational tanks. And the skippers would say, sorry Nick, somebody brought this up, they thought they wanted to know what it was. So we started to go back and we'd screw it back down. They're also heavily welt potted, so you'd get the welt pots drifting over and you'd find one sort of practically with about that much of the screws left in it. And so what we've done is gone back to the simple method of just literally sketch mapping. Hopefully we might be able to do more later on. The tanks are magnets for wildlife. The flat seabed of Purbeck, and they're artificial reefs, and to me that's something special. They're weapons of war. They're places where men died, but it's almost like out of death comes life. And we've also been carrying out sea search dives on them. It's interesting, I've done some work this summer with MSDS, and they've got a project looking at sort of the ecological capital of shipwrecks and everything. So I can see us fitting into that. You can see the congers. That's the only injury we had. We had one of our stalwarts went down, and we've done some film. We had some film crews come to us, and we wanted to make sure the reef that we put down was in full view. So he was tying the reef on to the top of the turret. But obviously tying the reef on means that you've got to put your hand inside. BSAC need to write a whole new manual about signs about I've been bitten by a conger. Basically it was give him his due. He tied the reef on and then went to the surface. Ugh, that looks nasty. You need to go to casualty. Hiya, you all right, Pete? Yeah, they kept me in overnight. But we had a barbecue just after that, and we took great pleasure in providing him with grilled conger reef. We've been lucky to be able to be, for tanks 1 and 2, because they are, if you like, recreational commercial dives. We've been using Divers Down. It's one of the local dive companies at Swanage Pier. And we've made a point at the start of each season to go out and lay a reef. And this is us at the start of the project in 2017, going out to lay the reef on tank 1. This year, far too rough, so we managed to do it on the following Saturday. But most of our diving has been on the club rib. And yeah, this is British diving. We've had 2 cracking seasons where we've been able to get out. There's some of the days it was a case of, you know, you just wanted to drink water the whole time because you were so hot in your dry suit, or you looked longingly at the person who just had that wetsuit on. But the tanks are about half an hour drive, easy out, but so difficult to find. 1 and 2, everybody knows they're buoyed. Tank 1's buoyed permanently. But the other ones, they're approximately 5 metres by 3 metres, and they stand about barely 2 metres high at the seabed at the moment. So trying to find those was quite a struggle to start with, even with the marks. And thanks have to go to Bournemouth University because we were struggling with tank 5, and it was only when Tom sent us the marks, which we thought, that's not the marks that somebody gave me, that's not the definitive marks. So we've actually, we've dived all the tanks now. Standard survey work when we're down there, tape measures, clipboards, and then sometimes the visibility is really nice. They're quite shallow, 15 metres is the deepest, the shallowest is about 8-9 metres. Tanks, ones we call 3 to 7, are in a bit more sheltered area, so they're very, very weedy. And you can't dive them at all times, but the current is more forgiving there, so you do find that when you're looking at them, it's just solid weed all over it. That's typical of the conditions. Certainly not bad, but very, very green, and then trying to identify blown up bits of metal, because the Navy blew them in the 80s because they had concerns about shells being brought up. So definitely slightly murky. you know, that is British diving. As I say, they're havens for wildlife. This is one of my favourite shots. I think this is why I've got a fascination with the tanks. Well, the first time I dived it, probably 20 years ago, it was a case of, well, it's around here somewhere, drop the shot in, do a circular search, and I thought, the visibility's gone really bad over there, and the visibility parted, and I saw the tank, and it was just surrounded by this shoal of bib. And they really are sort of rather lovely. This is, I think this is tank 4, and that's typical of the remains. As I said, in the late 80s, the Navy blew them. Didn't do a brilliant job from their point of view. From our point of view, probably they could have not blown them so badly, but they still recognisable. That's why it took me probably 15 years to start diving the tanks as a project. I've been told that it's just like a flat pack IKEA box. There's nothing there. But to me, they are recognisable as tanks. There's still a lot of information we can get from them. This is an aerial view taken by one of our photographers, Paul Pettit, looking down into the tank. And you can see quite often most of the innards are gone, possibly blown up, but there's still lots of pipe work and everything. There's still lots of survey work. And I just found out today, talking to Bournemouth University, that they've actually done photogrammetry of all the tanks now. So that's going to be marvellous to fit into any project work. So what are our successes? Lots of publicity. For some reason, the tanks have sparked people's imagination. And we had lots of press coverage. I don't like admitting it, but I've actually been quoted in the Daily Mail. However, that did cause lots of problems because we hadn't formally contacted the regiment. And the regiment got in touch with the National Trust because the, dare I say, Mail had perhaps got the emphasis slightly wrong, and it implied that we were going to sort of be excavating the tanks. They're not war graves, but the regiment consider them as war graves. After lots of toing and froing, again, using Nautical Archaeology Society, British Sub-Aqua Club, saying we were diving by those guidelines, we now have a very good working relationship with the regiment. Even to the extent that it used to be, dear Brigadier Dorks, yeah, dear Mr. Reed, yeah, Brigadier, yeah, Clendon Dorks, brackets, Brigadier, retired. We now got to, dear Nick, thanks for your email, regards, Clendon. Success. But they really do seem to have sparked interest. We've worked very closely with Citizen. We've got a good working relationship with them, and we've been involved in some of their guided walks over at Studland. And this is one of the Citizen staff leading a guided walk about World War II. We've also been involved in television, and this is Britain at low tide. This is Fort Henry, and I was interviewed, and then following that, we said, well, we can go down on the tanks. Oh, right. Yeah, if you've got you two going, that's 2 divers, and then we got the film. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Right, that means, how many does the boat hold? 12. I think we're going to need 16 divers now. So we actually used Southampton University's ROV, which was really quite exciting. And this year, I was, again, through NAS, I was contacted by Turn TV, and we were involved in a live TV broadcast with Dan Snow. We did some filming on the tanks, beautiful day at the top. There's me sort of explaining to Dan Snow what we're going to be doing, etc., and he's nodding sagely, etc. Again, I couldn't get over the amount of kit. That's their compound for 3 days of filming. And I have to say, you see these, MasterChef programs where they talk about how, you've got 2 hours to cook food for 20 people and it comes out absolutely fantastic. Trust me, it does. The food is absolutely fantastic on these things. The live show didn't quite work out. Oh, we want to put divers down. You do realise it's an hour before slack. Yes, but I'm sure we can get down. You won't be able to get down until a quarter of an hour before the end of the programme. But we want to get down. So they put a diver in half an hour before they said they were going to do, which is an hour and a half before slack water. He came to the surface saying, no, call it. So unfortunately, we didn't have a live link up. And anybody who saw that, that's the reason why Scotty didn't get on the tank. Probably, for me, one of the biggest successes is this. We've actually found 4 out of the 6 men faces, and we put faces to names. And you look at that. Albert Kirby at the top, 19. You think, actually, if he wasn't in uniform and he went to get a pint, he probably got turned down. Yet there's this guy who lost his life training for D-Day. And that is the highlight. That's Albert Price, and he is the last survivor of the exercise. And we've got just under a minute.
I might need to just do your audio, because I think I've turned your volume down.
Right, okay. We're going to do a quick technical bit of audio twiddling, and then this is Albert. But just listen to this guy. Albert's 94. His daughter didn't know anything about this till the television programme. And I had the privilege to go up and talk to Albert, and spent 2.5 hours. His wife kept coming in with sandwiches. Do you want some more? No, thank you, Mrs. Price. No, that's fine. You know, do you want to? No, thank you. I'm thinking I've got to drive from Birmingham back to Dorset. You know, any more tea, and I'm going to have to make 20 stops, not 2 stops. Okay. Right. So this is a minute of audio.
You were involved in the exercise of studying, weren't you?
My tank was one of the 6 that sank. We started at about 3,000 or 5,000 yards, I forget which exactly, but we were getting, but we soon lost control because the sea was so rough, we couldn't just keep it under control. And eventually, my tank hit a rock, and we got out, and we just hung onto the top of the frame of the screen, and just hung there waiting to be rescued. And I had nowhere to go into the sea, so I went in. And the tank had slid backwards and disappeared. And we were left in the water. But they came back and picked us up. We were floundering around in the sea for a while.
Floundering around in the sea for a while. This is a 19-year-old who joined the army at 17. At 19, he's in the English Channel in battle dress with a rubbish lifebelt on, waiting to be picked up. 6 weeks later, he lands in D-Day 10 minutes before the rest of the troops because he's armoured support. 7 days later, he's blown up by a 75mm German anti-tank gun. As he climbs out of his tank, he's machine gunned. He then crawls through a hedge, is given a rifle and told, stay there, even though he's bleeding, he's severely injured. You've got to defend this position. A year later, at the end of the war, he gives his demob ticket in, and they say to him, you lied about your age. You're actually 6 months younger than you are. You've got to do another 6 months in the army. But everything Albert told us was just, I don't know, it was almost describing he'd been down to Tesco's to get the 2-for-1 offer. Really humble, absolutely fantastic. What have we learned? I think, I'm not going to read it out because that's probably true for every archaeological investigation. Certainly the last one. By looking for answers, we've got more questions. And in fact, the club has said, we want to carry on this year. We want to carry on with the investigation. And what's going to come? Well, working on the exhibition, more public engagement, more research, all leading towards, hopefully, a big commemoration next April where we're working with the Regiment, the Tank Museum, National Trust, and other organisations to commemorate those 6 men. It's normal at the end of one of these sort of ceremonies, any ceremony, they pick up the award and they say, I've got to give thanks. And really, to be honest, yes, thanks to the team. Yeah, Isle of Purbeck, I've been a member of the club for 25 years, ever since I started diving, and it's brilliant. Thanks to NAS in particular for the support they've given through their training projects, through being on the end of the phone. Thanks to British Sabbatical Club for supporting us with everything that they've done. But to me, the most important thanks have to go to Lieutenant Gold. I'm going to read these out because I always get the names wrong. Lieutenant Gold, Sergeant Hartley, Corporal Townsend, Corporal Park, Trooper Petty, and Trooper Kirby. My thanks go to those men for the sacrifice that they gave. Hopefully our project's done their memory service, and I feel privileged to be able to tell this story, and I hope we're doing it in a sensitive and a proper fashion. Thank you.